There's me. That's my happy smiling face. I'm the program quality director for this year. And today we're going to be talking about, this is just a quick overview of the discussion we're going to have today. Specifically, I'm going to give you some general information about contests, what the timer's role is, what the ballot counter's role is. Let's talk about some training events. When I originally put this deck together, I had more dates that were upcoming. This is now the second time that I'm giving this particular training. And so some of those dates have already passed. And then we open it up for some Q&A. If you'd like, if there's something that is a burning question for you as we go along, you can go ahead and ask it. Otherwise, if it's just a general question, what I'll ask is that you jot it down and save it for the end. With that, we're going to go into it. For our speech, these are the requirements for a contestant. Later on, we'll talk about the requirements for you as a functionary. So to be a contestant in either international humorous speech contest, it's open. Humorous speeches are open to all members that are in good standing. What does that mean? A member that's in good standing is someone who is paid up currently themselves, and they're also a member of a club that they're representing in this contest that has at least 8 current paid up members. So it's possible that a member may be in good standing, but the club may not be, in which case they would not be, quote unquote, eligible to compete, and they would get disqualified at a later step when that is observed. At the international speech level, there's an additional requirement that says that either you have to have a DTM under a legacy system, or you have at least 2 levels completed in any given path. Now, what that means is you don't get one level here and one level here. That doesn't add up. This is not a associative addition here. No, you have to have 2 levels in a given path. Now, one interesting thing is if you have a club in your area that is a newly chartered club that was within the last roughly year, they waive that requirement. And the reason for that is they feel that you may not have had enough time to actually complete those 2 levels. So they give some deference for newly chartered clubs, especially if they've only been in session basically for just a few months. Okay, exclusions. Members who are current deck members, such as area directors, such as Tara and Joe, cannot compete in a contest. They feel this would be an unfair advantage because you're visible to the clubs and perhaps people who might be judges, etc. Certain other D30 officers that are not necessarily deck members per se, but are like the finance manager, administration manager, etc. The PRM and whatnot. Officers that are regional or above the district, obviously. Those who are planning to run for elective office, either in District 30 or above. I myself am running for district office, so I even if I wasn't a deck member currently, I would still be unable to participate. And the other exclusion is if you were a prior champion of public speaking any time in your life, you cannot participate. And this is the essentially the fairness doctrine on that. They figure that, hey, if you've been there and done that, you don't get a second bite at that apple. You don't need to. You've already completed that. Everybody knows who you are. It would be unfair of you to compete against people who aren't of your caliber that you have already won. So those people are not allowed to compete in the international speech contest. They can compete humorous speech or whatever, but not in international. A member can actually compete in more than one club. Some people don't know this, but here's the caveat. If you win in multiple clubs, some people are members of 4 or 5 clubs. If they win in more than one club, they have to pick which area they want to compete in. You cannot be competing in areas and then come back up and work up to division or district level and competing against yourself. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so you have to pick which area you want to represent. Okay, so now we have speech contest dates Club contests need to be finished by the end of February. This is a leap year, so you get an extra day. We had 8. Well, it's now, I should say, there's 88 clubs. We just got a couple new ones. Area contests are being held during March, and there's 21 areas. And Tara, that's your area director, so that you know that. You need to pick a date for that. Division contests are held in the first 21 days of April, and there's 6 of those divisions. And then the district contests are going to be held during the annual conference, which is May 4th, essentially, is when we're going to have the contest. When I wrote this down here, there was some discussion whether we would have it 2 days, 1 day. What we may be doing is we may do something on Friday and then something on Saturday. Right now, we're currently not looking on doing anything on Sunday. So May 4th, we would be having the actual speech contest. Of which, by the way, that's when the humorous speech ends. It doesn't go any further, but the international speech continues on. From there, the winner has their tape, because we do tape it. The tape is sent over to Toastmasters International. And what they do is they review those tapes and they determine who gets invited to the annual conference to compete in the semifinals and then in the finals. Timers. Let's talk about timers. We need 2 timers for each of the area contests, for area, division, and beyond. One is going to show the cards, the green, yellow, red, and the other is the official time recorder. Both of them, however, will actually record times on their sheet, because what happens is things happen all the time. Right now, at the area and division level, we're going to be doing these via Zoom. Technology is a wonderful thing, but guess what? Sometimes it fails, okay? People get lost. So if the main timer is in the middle, all of a sudden, boom, they're lost and they disappear. The backup timer, who's also kind of watching, the main timer, if they are gone, then they take over. Then they put up, the green, yellow, red in their place. So it's considered to be like plan B. That's our backup. And they're there just in case we have a problem. Eligibility. Again, the member to be a timer has to be in good standing, as we mentioned and defined before. The additional requirement is that the member who's a timer should not be in the same club as any contestant of the contest that they are timing. Okay. Now you could have it where, let's say, and there's a reason for this. You could have someone who is in a different area than your area be the timer. But what happens, as I mentioned before, sometimes members who are contestants are in multiple clubs. And so they may actually be in a club that person who's in the other area is also in. So they can't be in that same club as a contestant. Okay. So therefore, because not that they would change the time at all, that there's a lack of integrity. The problem that it is it's a perception problem. People would look at that and say, wait a second, you're in the same club as them. That's your good friend. Did you favor them anyway? Did you shave off a couple of seconds? Maybe they were close on time and you said, okay, instead of 7 minutes, because it's 5 to 7 minute speeches for both of these, and you're allowed 30 seconds on top. So maybe their actual time was 7 minutes and 32 seconds, but because he's your buddy, you shaved it off and now they're 7 minutes and 29 seconds. If that was the case and people are kind of questioning, like, hey, did you favor them? We want to avoid any perception that there's any favoritism going on. So that's why this rule is in place. Okay. Scroll down here a little bit. Okay. There's a form that the timers use, and I'll show you what that form is in more detail separately, but I made a screenshot of that form, and this is the form that you actually would use. Contestants are allowed plus or minus 30 seconds for most contests. The exception for that is on the table topics contest. On table topics contest, which is only 1 to 2 minutes, you don't get leeway on the bottom side. You got to talk for at least a minute. You don't get by talking 31 seconds on your question. Okay, they usually give you like a minute. A minute is the minimum. and then 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the upside. But all the other contests, you get plus or minus 30 seconds on, and the timer will jot down the actual time that they record in minutes and seconds. Now, because both the humorous speech and international speech are 5 to 7 minute speeches, the minimum time is therefore 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Maximum time is 7 minutes and 30 seconds. If you are outside those times, the contestant is disqualified for time. You mark DQ next to their line, and when you send it in to the chief judge, you let them know, either you call them, you text them, you email it. If you're sending this in via email, you include in your email, by the way, contestant John Smith was disqualified for time. And they'll see the sheet and they'll see the DQ on there and they'll see the time and say, yep, they're disqualified for time. If there's a technical issue that comes up while the contestant is speaking, such as they lose connection or they get glitched out, the chief judge may direct you as a timer to say, timer, please add 15 seconds, please add 30 seconds to the time allowed. And so they may, in fact, in this case, instead of being 7 minutes and 30 seconds, they may get 8 minutes. And that, let's say, so they would be allowed 8 minutes. And so they went 7 minutes and 50 seconds. That would still be okay. You'd mark on there an asterisk, and on the bottom of it, you would say additional time allowed due to technical issue, something of that nature. Okay. But the chief judge will direct you as a timer on what to add. They may also decide that the contestant will start over from the beginning if it's early on in the speech. So again, that's the chief judge's call. They will direct you as a timer on what to do for that. And if that happens where they start you over, you just don't record that time. You just record the second time. Ballot counters. Here's what the ballot counters requirements are. For area and division contest, you need 2 ballot counters. For the district contest, you need 3 ballot counters. Okay, it goes up. Okay, there's a requirement. That's the same thing with judges. You have 5 at the area and division level. You need 7 at the district, and at the international, you need 9. So the number goes up as you go up in level. Ballot counters will independently tally their results and then compare their results with the chief judge and each other. And you all should all have the same result because you're basing it all on the same sheets that you're getting from the judges. What will happen is during the final instructions that a chief judge gives on the day of the event. So there's like a 30 minutes before you actually start the contest, they will have a separate breakout room. And in that breakout room, the chief judge will give final instructions. In that final instruction phase, they will say to the judges, you need to send your ballot, the bottom part of the ballot, to myself, meaning chief judge, and the ballot counters. And what they'll do is they'll send an email that has, your name on there and the chief judge's name. So it'll have the chief judge and the 2 ballot counters on there, and then the judges' names will be blind CC'd. Although you will know who they are anyway, because you're going to get the slips of paper, so you're going to know who the judges are. But typically that's what they do. And so they will go and they send this out to the judges saying, here's where you send your results to. And so when the judges are all done and they scan it in, if they got a scanner, or they take a picture of it and they text it to you, however the arrangements are set up, chief judge will say how it is. That's how you're going to get it. So you may get texts or you may get an email. You take those results, you tally them up. They're going to be 1, 2, and 3 points based on whether they're going to be third, second, or first. And I'll go through that in just a second. Again, the eligibility for a ballot counter is a member of good standing, and they cannot be in the same club as a contestant in the contest that they're tallying the results for. Again, it's a perception thing. Ballot counters, here's your sheet. So, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail in a moment. I'll bring it up, and we can look at the actual form a little bit more detail. So what happens is basically you're going to have the judges are going to have the names of the contestants on top. Okay, you'll write them in, and then you're going to have all the names of the judges going down the line here, and then you're going to go and assign points. If you've got 5 contestants, then you're going to see one of them have 1 point, one that's going to have 2 points, one that's going to have 3 points. Okay, and they're awarded in reverse order. So first place is going to get 3 points, second place 2, third place 1. So it's inverted. And why is this important? We're going to get to that in just a second. Initially it sounds odd, but it actually makes a lot of sense. So what you do is you take all these scores and you will total them up on top. In the case of the 5, you're going to have 2 people that have no points for that, and that's fine. Now, this system is set up so that you have the most consistent review of the performance of each of the contestants. And what do I mean by that? It's actually an interesting and clever way to do it. I may have, let's say there's 5 contestants again. I may have one contestant that has first place awarded by 2 judges. But then the other 3 say they only got third place. Okay, so I would have 3, 6, and then I would have 9 points. The next contestant actually has all 5 of them saying that that person won second place. So even though that second person didn't have any first place showings, they were more consistent and they got 10 points versus the other person that only got 9 points. So you see how that works, where it's not how well you do, because people's perception, even judges' perceptions, are different from one to the next person. The way the person presented their message struck a chord with that person, and they said, nope, that person I thought strongly was the number one. Other people say, they had that message, and I thought that they were being phony about it. I think they were kind of just trying to tug at my heartstrings, but I had the impression that didn't really mean it, that they were just making it up. They weren't sincere in how they were actually presenting that material. And so they will have taken it a different way. As such, you want a consistent judgment of how they actually did. And that's why these points are awarded in such a way. And so you total them up on the bottom, and presumably if you added it all correctly and you jotted the numbers down correctly from each of the judges, then you would all come up with the same. When I say all, your other ballot counter, and the chief judge should all have the same result. If you don't, then everybody goes back and says, okay, who miscounted here? Okay, because that's just simple math. It should just add up total. Okay. Now, a ballot counter is not to be worried about whether or not someone went over on time. That's not your job. That's the timer's job. And the reason for that is this. You score, they score, and the judges are also told this. They're told you score it regardless of whatever the time is. Because a person may be the best speaker and have the best speech, but they went over on time. And so you'll see it, and then they'll be there, and that person will have, 5 threes across the board. Okay. But then after you guys go and you tally your scores, then the chief judge will say, but I have from the timer's report that even though this person scored in first place, they got disqualified for time. In which case you would then take who came in second in terms of total score. That becomes the first place winner. So if that makes sense. You discuss the results of the chief judge. They shall match. Oh, by the way, if there's a tie between one person and the next person, that tie gets resolved by the tie-breaking ballot, which you don't see. Only the chief judge sees the tie-breaking ballot, okay? And only the tie itself gets broken. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say person in first place is the clear front runner. Everybody else is left in the dust. But the second and third place finisher, those are tied. The chief judge will go through and look at the tie-breaking judge. Now, the tie-breaking judge may have saw it differently. And they actually had the first place finisher in third place. And they had the other two in second and third. Okay. Doesn't matter. The first place winner, by consensus of all the other judges, was already determined. The only thing that matters is the relative positioning that the tie-breaking ballot has for those who are tied. So because the tie occurred in the second and third place, those two contestants are looked at and said who came in second and third, and then that's the way that gets determined. Okay, makes sense. Toastmasters has been doing this for a while, so they've got these things all kind of figured out on how the quote-unquote fairest way to do this is. And so this is what they've determined over time is the best and fairest way to determine who the best contestants are. We're going to go back over these forms in just a moment. I'm going to just go over and talk about training events. We had judges training. We had ballot counters training. This is the second one here. So that one's done now. The Zoom host training, we had a couple opportunities for that. And we have chief judges training that's coming this Saturday. So if you're interested in chief judge training, that would be something to also look at. And that's this Saturday. It's going to be at 9 o'clock. I had to rearrange my schedule a little bit because originally at 9 o'clock, they wanted to have me do my interview for district director, but we had to move that to 11 to accommodate the chief judges training. We're also going to have a special session on how to prepare a humorous speech that Marty Jalova is going to do. He did this once before. It was well received, and we would like to have people having our opportunity to look at it again. Unfortunately, it's late in the season because the clubs aren't going to be able to have this, but there's still benefit because what happens is this may give them some ideas to help refine their humorous speech for the area contest. So this is still of value to them. And so we encourage all the club members, especially the people who are advancing from the areas to, from the clubs, they competed in the area, and then now the areas are advancing to division. The winners of those areas should definitely attend this. And other people should attend it because it's just entertaining, and he does a very good job of that. Training sessions are typically an hour each, as you notice here. And I now open the floor up for Q&A. Oh, wait, before I open it for Q&A, let me do timesheet. Can open that up. Come on. Great.
Okay.
So this is the timer sheet here. There are specific instructions down below. I've paraphrased them before. It basically will tell you that international speech contest, again, you get 4 minutes and 30 seconds, no more than 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Green light is at 5, yellow light is at 6, and a red light is at 7. When you put the light up or a card up or whatever to do that, we have backgrounds in Zoom that you can flip through. Typically what will happen is if you do use Zoom, they'll put a blue background first and it'll stay blue until the green comes on. The green is on and stays on until the yellow comes on. And then the yellow stays on until the red comes on, and then the red stays on until they're done. Okay. And the reason for that is if you just flash it quick, the contestant may be animated and they're doing their own thing and they're really into the speech and they may not see that flash. Okay. So that's why we always leave where they're at, whether it's green, yellow, red, up so they can see that when they glance over at that time. So international speech. And then of course it says international and humorous. They're both the same time, 5 to 7 minute speeches. The other ones are here too for reference if you do those contests at a later date. But this is the same sheet that's used for all contests. And again, what they would do is you would write down the contestant's name, number of minutes, number of seconds. If they're disqualified, you write over here on the side here, DQ. So that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it is. And that was my question. Where specifically are we writing DQ if that were to happen? But you just
Right
answered
here
it.
on, let's say this first person was DQ'd, you write it right out next to their line. You can do it there, or you can do it right in front of their name, either way. You can put it here so they can see that it's that person. I like to write it over here because it's right next to the time. And it's so obvious then that they've been disqualified for time. Okay. So I'm going to close that guy down. Okay. And I'm going to open up the ballot counter sheet.
It's not going to happen, but if someone was to be disqualified because of content, is that something that the chief judge is going to tell me? Obviously I can hear it, but that it's not the ballot counter's job or to
It
say
is
that.
not the ballot counter's job for that. They would
Okay.
be advised of that. What happens
Perfect.
is, well, let me put it this way. You will probably see it. Okay. Again, you should not worry about the actual, you should still score it the way it was scored by the judges, because maybe there's only one judge that feels that there's a disqualification. The other ones may not see it that way, and they will have a discussion. We'll get to that in just a minute. But in terms of what the ballot counter's role is, again, you write the name of the contestants across the top, the names of the judges over here. And actually, because this is a fill-in form, you'll know the names of the judges beforehand because you're going to be in the briefing, right? So you're going to be in that briefing half hour beforehand. So you can write it all in here beforehand. You can write the names of the contestants all in here if you want to type them in nice and neat, or you can print it out and handwrite them in. Either way, it doesn't really matter, okay? Because this is just for you. You're going to just have that. And then you're going to enter in first, second, third over here. That's more for you. And then you're going to send it into the chief judge. Now, again, it's your preference whether you want to print it out, handwrite them in, or print it out this way and just punch the numbers in like that, and then save it, send it off to the chief judge. Make sure you save it before you send it. The reason is if you just send it like this without saving it, it will get to the chief judge and it will be blank because these are fill-in box type things. If you don't save it and then save it with a name, it's going to not keep your information. So word to the wise on that. Now, let's go back to that situation where disqualification for time, again, the chief judge will tell you that, okay, if you're the ballot counter, because the ballot counter doesn't see the time. Only the chief judge does. If one of the judges says, hey, I think this person is disqualified for content, typically they'll write it on their form, okay, but they may not. They may just inform the chief judge that they think that they have an issue with that. Again, you do the scores just like it normally is, because the call for a disqualification may not pass. Just so that you know, on the judge's side, and what the chief judge would do is there's a question raised about the content, the percentage of content. What'll happen is the chief judge will typically have a separate breakout room, and they will call in that judge and or all the judges to discuss whether or not there's a disqualification or not. They will then vote on that. And if the concerns are valid, then they will then probably call the contestant in and talk to them and say, there's been a challenge to your speech raised. And the challenge is based on the percentage of content. You said this during your speech. It took up a good portion of your speech. And under the rules of Toastmaster, we think that it should be disqualified. What say you? And they'll give the contestant a chance to explain why they felt that that was their own original thought. So it's not like a trial per se, but it is more or less an opportunity for the contestant to say, no, this was really my own work, even though it sounded like a lot of what was already on TV, when they actually did that. Maybe they never saw that show. Who knows? They just, great minds think alike. But if it's pretty obvious that it's the same content, maybe just paraphrased differently, that could be gray. could be great if it was paraphrased, because it wasn't really something that someone thought, also because it was a common thought, a common theme. And as a result, that it was really them using that common theme. Maybe it's like from Aesop's Fables or something like that. It has that storyline, like uh, the three Goldilocks and the Three Bears type of thing, and they're using that sort of theming for it. Well, theoretically, they should mention that it's like just like in Goldilocks and the Three Bears. If they do that, they're giving proper approbation, and then that would be acceptable. But if they really go on and on and on about that, then someone might say is, hey, they're really using this story and as their own thought, but it's sort of like it's a common theme that we've all heard before. And what they may be doing is extrapolating from that theme and making it into something their own. They're using it as an analogy. But again, it depends on the percentage of time and all that. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You muted.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I'm like, yeah,
Okay.
and that okay in that case, so no big deal.
So again, that's when the chief judge would go in and talk with the judge. Well, why do you feel this way? Da da da. They may bring all the other judges in. Did you see it the same way? And then they may say, well, I heard that, but it's kind of a well-known, parable, and that
Mhm.
really isn't there. He only really talked about the specifics for maybe 10% of the time, not 25% of the time, and he extrapolated with his own thought on that analogy, using it as a base. So that they'll hash it out and they say, okay, we agree, it's not a disqualification, and then the results that you guys as ballot counters will stand. Okay, so that's why you continue to do the scoring just like you would have if there was no disqualification, because the disqualification may in fact not stand.
Fair enough. That makes sense. And when we're doing the ballot counting, are we just going to go into a separate room and then the judges are going to
Yes.
say, I'm 3, I think this person was 3, I think this person was 2, I think this person was 1, like that, and then I'll just record it?
No,
Or
what'll
they
happen is typically, since these are going to be Zoom events, you will receive from the judges their separate ballots. And I think
oh,
we're
that's
done.
what you meant, the email or the
Yep.
picture.
So you're going to get email or you're going to get a text, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment.
Cool.
Before we leave this form here, you'll receive all of the ones from the judges. And unfortunately, you got to wait until you get all the judges in. So if you've got 5 judges, you're waiting for all 5 judges to get you their forms. And some people are more technically challenged than others, and it may take them a little longer to get that information to you. They may have a trouble scanning it in, or they may have a trouble taking the picture with their phone, whatever. But until you get all the ballots, there remains that period of silence. Now, you've been probably seen in contests before where it says the last contestant has spoken. We now ask there to be silence while the judges record their ballots and send them in. And it goes on 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and everybody's going do 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 in the back of their mind, and it's quiet. And then we tell our Toastmasters, and young Toastmasters who haven't done this before will do this. They'll keep asking a judge, well, have you gotten all the ballots yet? And then I will go and I will admonish them. Do not ask the chief judge if they got all the ballots yet. When the chief judge has all the ballots, they will tell you. Okay. In the meantime, you're supposed to be quiet. I know that irks a lot of people, but there's a reason for that. They don't want anything that would sway the judges from changing anything. If people start talking about the contest and, oh, that person did a really great job. No, everybody's supposed to stay quiet so that there's no persuasion or bias that's introduced by the audience members to the
Because they're
judges
still in that
themselves.
same room, right, Jim?
The judges are still in the same room until they send all their ballots out and the chief judge says, I have received all ballots. Once the chief judge has got all the ballots, that's done. Okay. They don't go back and get to change their numbers. Okay. They've already submitted their final result. So, it's out of their hands at that point. So when the chief judge says, Mr. Toastmaster or Ms. Toastmaster, I've received all the ballots. And they say, well, thank you. And then at that time, the Zoom host will actually open up a room for them, and the chief judge and the ballot counters will go into that room. And that's where you go. And while you're getting these ballots in, you're tabulating the numbers for you, putting the 1, 2, and 3 numbers in there. You're going in there, you're putting them all in there. You get that last judge, you got them in there, and now you're starting to total it up. Doesn't take long to total it up. Usually if there's only like, 5 contestants, it doesn't take that long to add 5 columns of numbers together. So, and you do it, you check on the bottom, you look it over, you say, okay, good. And then what they'll do, the chief judge will say, I've got 30 for Sam, I've got 28 for Sue, I've got Joe, he's got 26, and Sally did a really great job, she's got 32. And then everybody says, yep, those are the same numbers I got. Now, if you don't have those numbers, you should say, no, I had a different number. And in which case, you all need to check it, because you should all have the same numbers, because it's just simple math, right? And the reason we have more than one person do it is just to be clear and to do a cross check, so someone doesn't inadvertently make a math mistake and the true winner doesn't get what they deserve, which is, let's say they would have won first place, but there was a math error and they got discounted. So this is why we get multiple people do this, just to be absolutely sure that we have the correct tallies for that. Again, on the bottom here, first place gets 3 points, the majority, 2 points for second place, and 1 point for third place. Okay. It says check the timers report. Actually, that's what the chief judge does. They check the timers report. If they're disqualified, chief judge. If they're over or under time. Also, if they get disqualified for content or a callback. And the chief judge will notify you of that. So I'm going to close that one out. And since you asked, this is extra bonus material. Judges. Let's look at the judges, or the international, I'm sorry. There's a tie-breaking one, and there's also a regular ballot. So this is the tie-break. So this is what the judges' ballot looks like. You will not get this top part. You should not get this top part as a ballot counter. You should only receive this bottom part. And they're going to put in the first place winner, second, and third. And again, it says 3, 2, 1. They're going to have signed this, and then they're going to print their name here. Okay. Note, if it is not signed and their name printed, it is an invalid ballot and it is not counted. The chief judge will tell all the judges in the pre-briefing saying, make sure right now everybody sign the bottom of the form and print your name right now so you don't forget, because you don't want a ballot to be invalid. So they will tell them to do that right up front. And if they forget, oh, well, too bad, so sad, that one doesn't get counted. So that's why that's important. It has to be officially signed off on. They will award the points, whatever points are in here, they will have it on the bottom, and you'll see scores. Typically, you're not going to see 100, because I don't think I've ever seen a score of 100. Okay. Even the best speeches will be dinged here or there on a couple of these things, because there's multiple criteria that are there. Typically, they will not even score them in this category here at the highest category. You will find that these scores are going to be in the very good and good category. Again, typically you don't see anybody just there, only because if they're actually competing in a contest at the area and division level, hopefully they're beyond just the basic level where they're only fair. They're going to be typically in these 2 categories. And there's a pretty wide range here. So any questions on this form, and particularly the bottom part, which is what you're going to see. So you're just going to have first, second, third place shown, and you assign 3, 2, 1 respectively on your sheet.
No.
Pretty clear? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In the event that your first place finisher, and this is why we do first, second, third place, if the first place finisher cannot attend the division contest because something came up, their schedule changed, things happen.
Mhm.
So then the second place winner would then take over and represent the area. Same thing, if they can't, then the third place would.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's why we do that. And there's a form that you as the sponsor of the contest, there's a form that you fill out. I'll show you that too.
Yeah, that should be, show us that one.
Okay. So bonus material. Woo!
Love it.
Okay, here we go. So let me go and let me close that guide out. And blah, 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 chief judge results. I think this is it here. So, okay, this is the form that the chief judge fills out and sends over to you as a contest sponsor. They tell you whether or not there are any time disqualifications. They'll check yes or no. And then they will tell you who the third, second, and first place winner out. Note, inverse order here. Don't get this confused. Make sure you look at the titling on this. Okay. And the reason for this is normally when you present that, you will present the third place finisher first.
Okay.
And then the second place finisher, and then the first place finisher. Now, it depends on the number of participants in the contest. If you have a contest that has 3 or more, then you mention the third place winner. If there's fewer than 3, the second place winner and then the first player. Well, because there is no third place winner, right? Because there's only 2.
Right. Yeah.
You know, if there's only one person, that it's just the first place winner. So
Yeah.
it just makes intuitive sense.
Yes, that's true.
So you go in reverse order, mention first. Now, when you look at these here, you as a contest sponsor are going to fill in the certificates for first, second, and third place, which you should also have. I'll get to that in just a moment.
We do.
You got those already. Okay, great. So
Yep.
you put them in. You can pre-fill in all the information other than the name on those certificates. It'll be the date, you know, humorous speech contest or international speech contest. You could fill that in, and an area 1 or 2. You could fill all that stuff in beforehand, and then when you get this particular document from the chief judge, you will put that information in on the certificates itself. And you're doing that while they're finishing up with the interviews. And the Toastmaster should be kind of watching their time. And if they only have a few contestants, they need to ask more questions to fill that time until they can resolve. Because it takes a little bit of time for the chief judge and ballot counters to say, here it is, fill this form out. And what they may do if it's really tight, they may just either text or send a personal chat to you as the contest sponsor saying, here's my first, second, third place finisher. And you'll want to make sure you look at that very closely, make sure that they got it right. And if they say, here are the winners, and they just say John, Sally, and Joe, well, that doesn't tell you who first, second, third is. Okay. So you're going to want to go back and just to clarify, let me be clear. First place is first. This. Second place is this. Third place is that. Because you want to make sure you get that right. You don't want to put the third place finisher first and vice versa. Second place finisher obviously is second, right? Either way, it doesn't matter, right? But you don't want to flip these around because that would be really bad. Because once the results are called, the results are final. You can't say, oops, sorry, my bad. I made a mistake. Da 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 da. No.
What?
Okay. Yeah, that's right. So once you announce the results and the contest is closed, it's it. Okay. So hopefully that isn't the case. I think what would happen in that case, if you announce the third place winner as the first place winner, the chief judge should immediately jump in and say, blah, you got that backwards.
You can't have a Steve Harvey moment where you totally screw up.
So hopefully, but we don't know. Maybe the chief judge gets dropped or something. I mean, things happen. And so that's why you want to make sure that you got it correct.
Gotcha.
And you can only do what the chief judge told you. If the chief judge got it wrong, that's not on you. That's on the
Yeah.
chief judge. Say same thing. Okay, so I'm gonna not do that one. Let's go there. That's the result. So it's the next one. Here, this is the form that you need to send in to your division director, which is Joe, right?
Okay.
So you're going to go, and this was at the area level. You would check that box, area, and you're going to put in A1 or A2 as applicable. The date of the contest, and then you can have two of these forms. You're going to have one form for international, and you're going to fill that out. And then you're going to have another form, same thing, that's going to be for humorous, and you check that box. And again, you put in first, second, third place so that they know in case first place finisher is not available, blah, 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 blah. So the chief judge will fill all these in. And if there's 5 contestants, they'll put all 5 in there. Okay. And then they'll send them out to Joe so that Joe has it and he knows who the contestants are for his contest when he has it. Okay. Otherwise, he's going to be chasing after you and say, who won your contest? Okay.
Okay. So the chief judge completes this notification of contest winners, or does the area
Yes.
director? Okay.
Yes, because they have that all available.
Okay.
Or at least they put in the names and then they send it over to you and have you fill in this other stuff because they may not have
Member
this
number.
information. Member number net, you can get that off because you could pull a report for your area report and it'll have the member number on there.
Yep.
Okay.
And the club number.
Right. Okay. Any other questions?
Nope, Jim, that was clear as mud. I got it.
Clear as mud. That's what I always say.
It was
Joe,
good.
yourself?
No, that was great. Go ahead.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording. We can continue talking separately, but this is available for all those who are watching after the fact. Hopefully, we've answered your questions. If you still have a question, you can contact me or your area director or division director for answers to your questions. Thank you for watching.